It was Joe really doing this film and then reading the script, but that was what initially had drawn it to me because, I really like his films and have wanted to work with him. So he told me about it, but also at the same time told me that Gary Oldman was playing Churchill, so that was kind of a triple draw. And because then I read the script and I thought it was really, really wonderful. It's the Second World War, and it's just as he's becoming Prime Minister, so it's this time of uncertainty. When you begin the film, you're not sure who's in power and where it's going to go, and so it's The Darkest Hour is a very apt, obviously, title, and the war's progressing and France has been invaded, and personally Elizabeth's brother is fighting in the war, so she's got a very real connection to what's going on because he's in France and she doesn't know for most of the film what's happened to him. And then so it just charts this very first couple of weeks with Churchill and the decisions he makes. This is a story sometimes because it's about politics and history and stuff that might feel potentially quite heavy, but he brings a real sense of intimacy and humanity and personal relationships between the characters, which I think Joe does really well. He's very kind of clear and tells stories, paints pictures so beautifully. Through his direction and also how he moves the camera and the kind of atmosphere he creates. It feels very collaborative, and Ivana, who's sort of totally transformed me really with my look, because I've got this as a wig and all those bits in costume with Jacqueline, you sort of feel that all together you're creating these characters, and I think that only really happens when you trust the people you work with, and so yeah, I think that is really unique and special. At the start, when we meet Elizabeth, she's sort of less prepared and less ready to face this man, and isn't sort of equipped to deal with his quite harsh treatment of her. And the costume reflects that. She's in this kind of quite soft dress, and and then as we go on, she becomes harder, and she's got this suit and this sort of knit in wool that she wears down in the war room, and you sort of feel that she's growing up and becoming more serious and assertive, I had lots of fittings with Jacqueline where we kind of explored different styles and dress shapes, and I love all that stuff. It's just where the character begins, I think. It's very surreal turning up in the morning and seeing Winston Churchill, because Gary is just such an actor that just transforms in every role. He's to the point where he's unrecognizable, and I've barely seen him as Gary, actually, because we did in rehearsals. Sometimes even he came and he was in his sort of full prosthetics, and it is and he sounds. It's like being in the room with Churchill, and I kind of have forgotten what Gary looks and sounds like, which is the mark of a true actor. I think the prosthetics and the fat suit and all of that transforms him, but it's also just him, and he's just such a generous and it's so exciting to be in a scene with him because it's so real and so bold, and he's very funny and he's really generous. He's been a really kind actor to me, and it's been really fun actually doing a film where I'm not playing a love interest, or it's not about romance. It's about this kind of really beautiful bond that develops between Churchill and Elizabeth, and she's got a job to do, and that sort of fighting spirit, and it's really refreshing. I didn't really know anything about that changeover in power from Chamberlain, and I didn't, know who those men within reason were. So it was really interesting learning about that, and especially these girls, Elizabeth, for example, who were sort of flung into these writing telegrams to Brigadier Nicholson, to this person, to that person, and they'd have to just be so quick at remembering and learning who all these different people were, and to be able to then type out these telegrams. And so I felt a bit like what Elizabeth probably felt like, being flung into this world of men and politics. It's our history, but it's everyone's history, you know, and it's I think a very powerful time. And I mean, personally, I found it really moving and emotional, especially in these moments when you know that people lost everything, their family, their, you know, and especially after the First World War, it's just generations of men. And my granny lived in France, and she left her house when she was a young girl and went on the road to Paris. She went on an army convoy, and they were bombed, and she was on morgue duty. And I sort of thought of my granny and her experiences, and it just made me feel so sort of, I just thought it was so powerful. And it was just not very long ago. And you know, think of all the wars happening now. It's important to remember and, you know, reflect and learn more.